Last time we talked about the approach for handing out awesome shots to marketing and PR agencies, which are more consistent and always preferred, as freebies to encourage a response and a conversation instead of emailing them to nag for free contacts and connections. And we talked about how it's dramatically easier to gain attention and a following versus posting your non-relevant business, service, or product on Instagram hoping to get attention from bots or people who just don't care if you're something boring like a carrot farmer. I mentioned it before, I charge $200 an hour for aerial photography, and I only get calls from people who want to pay those prices because of the type of work that I do that I'm about to show you. And it's because I'm not your pay me some money and I'm just going to give you any old photos kind of photographer. This is what gets me calls back, references, and lots of people willing to pay those rates because they know what to look for when they're shopping for a photographer. So let me explain all those things to you right now. Number 1, shoot in RAW. This is a clear and resounding priority to any photographer who is charging. I don't know any photographers who would even buy a camera that didn't shoot in the RAW format, that take themselves seriously. No offense if you're not one of those people. If you don't understand, RAW format is a picture format that soaks in all the data in its purest form and it leaves it mostly unedited, versus JPEG, which is the standard format, and it just stamps all your data into a pre-decided set of color and brightness and clarity. Basically, JPEG is like having a lunchbox. You pack your favorite things in it, and it's easy to carry around and work with and deliver, but man, you just don't have any room in the lunchbox. And RAW is like just bringing the fridge, like some complete weirdo in the office. Okay, maybe I'm exaggerating a little bit by saying it's a fridge. No, I'm not exaggerating. Let me show you. The left side is the original JPEG from the Mavic 2 Pro. The right side is the edited RAW where I decided which colors I want to keep, brighten, highlight, etc., things like that. Notice in the second photo, there's also no meddling humans running around trying to litter everywhere. The point is, there isn't a competition between these two. You have to shoot in RAW. However, when you shoot in RAW, you're understanding that you have to then edit the image on your computer to decide which things you want to bring to life. Software isn't expensive at all. You can find some free. I pay $10 a month for Adobe Lightroom, which is the standard, and it is 1,000 times worth it because of all the mistakes I can fix from a shoot. Like the tourists walking around, it's really, really easy to get rid of them. Number 2, shoot in Panorama. It took me a long time to catch on to this, and this is a really big deal for 2 reasons. 1, when you shoot with the short lens on these drones, you have to get everything inside the frame in your little square, which means you got to back way up to get your subject in. You don't get to see the depth as much, and a lot of times it winds up being like, why did I buy a drone in the first place and wake up all my neighbors when I could have just shot this on the rooftop? But if you set your drone to shoot in Panorama, and usually I do a 9-photo stack, you can seriously be 10 feet away from the roof of a building. The drone is going to shoot down and then up and then left and right and compile all those photos into a folder. And then you can decide in the software, Adobe Lightroom, if you want to use all of it or part of it, or just the good sections, whatever you want. But you have the option. That is how you get that crazy, insane depth and you feel how tall a building is or how far the landscape is. It makes your lens look a lot shorter. The second, and probably equally massive reason I do this is because shooting one photo gives you 20 megapixels with the Mavic 2 Pro, 12 if you have basically every other DJI drone. But if you shoot a panorama, you're combining 9 of those photos, so it's like 180 megapixels. This is way more data to work with, more sensitivity when you're shooting in low light, and it just makes your drone look like it's from, I don't know, 2025. There is one thing you have to be really careful with. These photos stacked together can be difficult on the software and the computer will work hard to edit them. So hopefully you have a newer one, because even with my computer, which is nice, I built it myself, it sometimes gets bogged down and you need to be patient. But I'll show you how to set up smart previews later on in the software so your computer doesn't have to work as hard, but that's another section. However, either way, it's still worth it because the appeal you can get from doing this is way more dramatic, and I love deciding later if I only want to use half of it or the full photo or crop in or whatever. This is a really big one and it took me a while to catch on to. This is basically the only way I shoot now. I used to really suck at photography, and I noticed the biggest thing I was doing was just flying up as high and as far as I can and just aiming in circles at whatever I could nearby. It didn't matter what time of day, what the weather was like. What completely dictates all my shoots now, more than anything, is it's not what I'm shooting, it's the conditions. I used to think, wow, I want a shot of that mountain, it looks really nice to me standing here right now, and I didn't understand how a camera saw it. So I would just fly out there, take a picture, and think that's the shot, that's the end of it, I did the best I could. And what's starting to happen to me now, I'll look at the mountain and I'll think, oh, the clarity's not too good today, and the weather says it'll be better tomorrow, so I should go in the morning when the light is behind the mountain. But then a day later, it's going to be partly cloudy and there's a little bit of fog, so I should see if there's any clouds hanging there because it could do some cool stuff with the light. So that is my fastest, biggest improvement. It sounds silly, but seriously, it controls everything I do now with photos. I will be driving home and have 0 plans to go get a shot, but as soon as I see the sunset is really pink, or it just rained and there's this rainbow in the sky, or there's this weird haze in the air, I'll go and get a camera. And there are times where I've traveled specifically to a place just to take photos, and the worst thing is when you get there and the clarity is awful and there's fog in the air or dirt or something, and I'll completely sit out because I know as soon as I get up in the air and I start taking photos, it's going to be really underwhelming, and then I'm just dumping crap on people, and I don't ever want to do that. I only want to show my best stuff. So I'll wait it out for the best time of day or try and go again in the morning. Find a day where you can go on a hill and see the opposite end of town completely fine without any weird haze on the horizon. But what's even better is days that are partially cloudy but still really clear, and it adds pockets of light where you can see like the lines from between the clouds from the sun. And the best thing for sunsets is really feathery, soft clouds in the sky, because it gives you a lot of texture in photos when you change the contrast and clarity, adjust any of the warping. Another one, if you want to guarantee even lighting across, I don't know, anything that you're taking a picture of, go 10 minutes after sunset. If you go midday, you can shoot with RAW and try and adjust, or you can shoot in HDR, but if you don't want to do all that and you're the average guy who's just taking JPEGs, you're going to wind up with a ton of really deep, ugly shadows and hard contrast. It looks very amateur. So lower the shutter, keep the drone still, and shoot just a little bit. After sunset, you might have to shoot with a shutter speed of like 1/30th, but you'll still wind up with a nice, soft, even pink tone across the entire building, which is always much more preferable. Don't use any ISO. That's the end of it. Just adjust the shutter. Seriously, DJI, it's not the cameras, it's the gimbals that are phenomenal. You can go up to like 2.5 seconds and it'll still come out sharp and still. Lower the shutter instead of touching the ISO. General camera rule of thumb is that the aperture is the best in the middle. If you have a range between like 2 and 11, you want to be at like 5 or 6 to get the sharpest view. I've noticed with DJI drones, for some reason, the shallow numbers tend to be really sharp, like 2.8 is fine. When I can, I'll go to 5.6. I do know that if you're all the way down at f11, you're going to start to lose some clarity and it gets a little funny looking. It's not as sharp there, so try and avoid it. Lightroom is just such a revolutionary thing for photo processing. Back in the day with Photoshop, you used to have to manually adjust every piece of a photo with brushes and drawing over things, and it took a million years, and that was the end of it. That was one photo. You have to start all over for a second one, and you will really start to like what you do. But let's say you have an abusive drunk uncle and he works as a board member at Adobe and you just can't look past it and you never want to touch software. You have an alternative, and that's just to suck. Seriously, just start using Lightroom. Even if you just click auto, you're getting better results shooting with RAWs. I have a course in this stuff, and you can get $100 off if you look for the discount code in the text. Otherwise, just watch my videos on my channel, and I update it with advice and tips and stuff as often as I can. So go out and get some great photos.